There are places where people go to read, and then there are places where something else is reading you. In the fall of 2019, a security guard working the overnight shift at an old library in Massachusetts discovered something he couldn't explain. A woman floating between the bookshelves. A man sitting inside a wooden carriage that shouldn't have existed. And a voice coming through his radio from a channel that wasn't supposed to be there. The strangest part? The library had been warning people about these things for decades, but nobody believed the stories. Until that night. The Blackwood Public Library sits in a quiet town in Massachusetts. The building is more than 100 years old. Inside are thousands of books, including rare collections dating back to the early 1800s. During the day, the place is completely ordinary. Students study, children read, people come in for newspapers and coffee. But after midnight, the building becomes something completely different. Over the years, employees had reported hearing footsteps in empty hallways, books being pulled from shelves, furniture moving by itself, and occasionally, the sound of someone whispering from rooms that were supposed to be locked. Most employees refused to work the overnight shift, but Ethan Miller didn't believe in ghosts. He'd worked security at several buildings before: hospitals, warehouses, office complexes. He'd seen strange things, but never anything supernatural. So when he was assigned to the library's overnight security shift, he wasn't worried. His job was simple: make sure nobody entered the building, check the doors, walk the grounds, and call the police if anything suspicious happened. The first few nights were completely uneventful, until one night in October, a night when the moon disappeared behind thick clouds. Around 2:13 in the morning, Ethan was sitting inside the security office, listening to an old portable radio. Suddenly, the signal disappeared. Static. Nothing else. He turned the dial. Nothing. Another frequency. More static. Then, he heard something. Very faint, like someone whispering through a wall. Ethan turned up the volume. He froze. The voice disappeared. He adjusted the frequency again. Static. Then the voice returned. This time, it was clearer. A man's voice. Low. Angry. Almost like someone speaking through clear pear. Ethan stared at the radio. Then the voice continued. The radio went completely silent. Ethan slowly lowered it. For the first time that night, he felt uncomfortable. Then, bang! A massive crash came from inside the library. Then another, and another. It sounded like dozens of bookshelves were being thrown to the floor. Ethan grabbed his flashlight. He called the other security guard, but no answer. He tried again. Nothing. So, reluctantly, he entered the library alone. What Ethan didn't know was that someone else was already inside. 14-year-old Noah Carter had come to the library earlier that evening to study. He'd been reading in one of the small rooms on the second floor. He remembered sitting down around 6 p.m., but somewhere between one page and the next, he fell asleep. When he woke up, the library was completely silent and dark. Noah grabbed his backpack and tried to open the door. It wouldn't move. He pulled harder. Nothing. He started banging. Hello? No
Help!
answer. Is anyone
there? Is anyone there? Please
Nothing.
help!
He checked his phone. No signal. Then, he heard something behind him. A soft sound, like paper sliding across paper. Noah slowly turned around and stopped breathing. A woman was standing between the bookshelves, except she wasn't standing. Her feet were several inches above the floor. She was floating. She wore an old white dress. Her hair hung over most of her face, and she was calmly putting books back onto a shelf, one book at a time. Noah couldn't move. Then, the woman stopped. Slowly, she turned her head toward him. Her face was pale. Her eyes were completely black, and she smiled. Noah screamed. He dove underneath a table. The woman didn't chase him. She simply continued arranging the books. Then, she looked underneath the table and smiled again. Noah covered his mouth to stop himself from crying. The woman moved away. A few seconds passed. Then she returned. She looked underneath the table again, smiling, as if she was playing a game. And she wasn't in a hurry, because she knew he had nowhere to go. Suddenly, click, the door opened. Ethan stepped inside. Noah? The boy immediately crawled out from underneath the table and ran toward him. Please! Ethan caught him. Hey, what happened? Noah pointed toward the bookshelves. There's a woman! Ethan looked. Nothing. No woman, no movement, just rows and rows of books. Ethan tried to calm the boy down. He assumed Noah had been trapped inside for hours and was terrified. But then, bang! Another crash, this time from beneath them. Ethan looked toward the floor. The sound came again. Bang! Something was moving underneath the library. Ethan told Noah to run outside and call the police. Then, he followed the sound, down the stairs, past the archives, and into the basement. The basement was almost completely dark. At the end of the hallway was a door Ethan had never seen before. He approached it. Before he could touch it, the door slowly opened. Inside, someone was screaming. A man's voice, panicked, desperate. Help me! Ethan raised his flashlight. The room was empty, but the screaming continued. Then he heard another sound, metal, scraping against the floor. Ethan pointed his flashlight toward the corner. Nothing. The screaming suddenly stopped. Silence. Then, a whisper came from directly behind him. Don't turn around. Ethan froze. He turned anyway. Nothing. He ran. On his way back to the security office, Ethan crossed the library's rear courtyard. And that's when he saw it. Something was sitting in the middle of the lawn. A wooden carriage, old, black, covered in dust. It looked like something from the 1800s. Ethan was certain it hadn't been there earlier. He approached slowly. One of the curtains was slightly open. Inside, someone was sitting. Ethan raised his flashlight. Hey! No response. How did you get in here? The figure didn't move. Ethan pulled the curtain aside and immediately wished he hadn't. A man was sitting inside. He was wearing an old-fashioned black suit. His skin was gray. His face was covered in bruises. Deep cuts ran across his neck and chest. He looked like he'd been beaten almost to death. But the worst part was that he wasn't breathing. Yet somehow, he was still moving. Slowly, the man's eyes lifted toward Ethan. He stared directly at him, then smiled. Ethan stepped backward. The man's head suddenly tilted sideways, farther and farther, until his neck snapped. His head fell from his body and landed at Ethan's feet. Ethan screamed. He ran. He didn't stop until he was outside the library gates. The following morning, Ethan came back only to collect his things. An older security guard named Walter was waiting for him. Ethan told him everything: the radio, the woman, the basement, the carriage, the dead man. Walter listened quietly. Then he asked one question. Did you hear a man say, "Tonight is my night"? Ethan stared at him. How do you know that? Walter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he told Ethan about the stories the library staff had kept hidden for years. The building had once stood on land where an old estate had existed. Several unexplained deaths had occurred there, and over the decades, employees had reported seeing the same figures: the woman between the bookshelves, the man in the carriage, and the voices beneath the library. Walter believed they were all connected. The woman was supposedly an old librarian who had died inside the building. She was obsessed with keeping every book in its proper place. Employees claimed that if someone left a book somewhere it didn't belong, they would hear footsteps following them through the stacks. Sometimes, the book would mysteriously appear back on the shelf. Other times, the person would find the book sitting beside their bed, even though they'd never taken it home. But the man in the carriage was different. According to an old newspaper clipping Walter had found years earlier, a man had died on the property after being violently attacked. Before he died, someone had called for a carriage to take him away, but by the time it arrived, he was already dead. Walter believed that every few years, the carriage returned, always at night, always in the same place, and always with the same dead man sitting inside. But then there was the basement. Part nobody liked talking about, because according to local stories, the basement had once been used as a holding room. People were supposedly chained there. Some never made it out. And even decades later, employees occasionally heard screaming beneath the library. Walter looked at Ethan. "You weren't the first guard to hear it." Ethan asked, "Then who was?" Walter pointed toward the security office. On the wall were photographs of former employees. Several faces had been crossed out, and beneath them was a handwritten note. "Do not work alone after 2 a.m. Ethan stared at the photographs. Then he noticed something. One of the photographs showed the old library from more than 100 years ago. Standing beside the building was the same wooden carriage, and sitting inside it was the same man Ethan had seen the night before. Walter, that's why nobody works here after midnight anymore. Ethan looked at him. Why? Walter's face went pale. Because the library isn't haunted by the dead. It's haunted by the people who never realized they were dead. That was the last night Ethan ever worked at the Blackwood Library. But according to former employees, the stories never stopped. Books still move. Footsteps still echo through empty hallways. And sometimes, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the security radio turns on by itself. There is only static. Then, a man's voice. Low. Angry. Almost whispering. Tonight is my night. And if you ever hear those words, whatever you do, don't answer. Because according to the people who have heard it, the voice isn't coming from the radio. It's coming from somewhere inside the library. And something is waiting for you to come looking for it.